in her mouth. I'm not going to read all of his quotes, it's too graphic, but basically threatened her
15
and said that he'd kill her if she or her family told anybody about the attack. She later said that attack killed a part of her. They killed a part of my soul. I'm quoting her, that I can never get back. He was sentenced to 141 years in prison. The trial court determined that he could not be rehabilitated. That's a quote. Mr. Moore could not be rehabilitated. It would be a waste of time and money and common sense to even try, end quote. You, however, argued all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court that he ought to be released early because his sentence was a violation of the Eighth Amendment against cruel and unusual punishment. And you also said at the end of the case to the press, I'm going to quote you now, kids are different. And any sentence for a non-homicide offense that denies them a second chance of life is unconstitutional. Kids are different. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around why you call this teenager who did the things I just described a kid, and say that kids are different and he ought to be treated differently. Help me understand that. Why you chose to represent this individual. You have a lot of talent. You're highly educated. You're obviously extremely capable. You, by your own estimation, devoted hundreds of pro bono hours to representing Mr. Moore. Why are kids different? Why is this guy a kid? And why shouldn't he have served time for his horrific crimes, for what he did to that young woman?
Senator, there were horrific crimes in that case, and despite the horrific crimes in that case, I do believe that everyone is entitled to defense and everyone's entitled to a constitutional sentence. And the United States Supreme Court, in the case Graham versus Florida, did say that kids are different. If they are under 18, they are treated differently under the Constitution. And it was my duty as Mr. Moore's advocate to argue that he receive a sentence that comported with the case in Graham.
Well, just to be clear, the Supreme Court didn't say kids are different. You said kids are different. That's not their quote. That's your quote. This was a case of first impression. Graham deals with a different set of facts. You argued to the Ohio Supreme Court it ought to be extended to people like Mr. Moore, and you succeeded. I mean, the Ohio Supreme Court took you up on it, and they said that the guy ought to be released. I just am surprised that this is how you choose to use your considerable talents and to argue for the extension of a Supreme Court case to an individual like this, and to argue that he's somehow different. He's a criminal. He was 15 years old at the time he committed these horrific crimes, and what he took away from that young woman, she'll never get back. I find it hard to understand. My time's expired, and